Have you ever considered that an entire empire might have been erased from history? Imagine, for centuries, maps from the 16th to the 19th century consistently depicted a colossal territory known as Tartary, or Great Tartary. This wasn't some minor kingdom. It was a vast empire stretching from Eastern Europe all the way into Asia. But then, it vanished without a trace. What happened to this once magnificent civilization? Did it simply fade away? Or is there something far more sinister behind its sudden disappearance? Join us as we uncover the secrets of this lost empire. Before we dive deep into the conspiracy, let's start with the most undeniable evidence. Take a look at historical maps from the 16th to the 19th century. For over 3 centuries, European cartographers consistently showed this colossal region. These weren't mere sketches or fantasy maps. With just one glance, you'll see an empire dominating vast stretches of Asia. From the Caspian Sea to the Pacific Ocean, and from Siberia to Central Asia. Some maps even distinguished between independent Tartary, Chinese Tartary, and Russian Tartary, suggesting not just a region, but multiple Tartarian territories. But here's the crucial question. How can such an enormous landmass simply disappear? Maps from French, Dutch, and German nations all showed consistent descriptions of Tartarian territories, agreeing on its location and extent. This isn't the kind of consistency you'd expect if cartographers were just making things up. Yet, in the 19th century, Tartary began to drop off maps. Not gradually, but suddenly, as if someone decided this empire should no longer exist on paper. Hundreds of historical maps documented this empire for 3 centuries. And then, nothing. Modern atlases bear no trace. Geography textbooks never mention it. It's as if an entire chapter of world history was ripped from the books. If Tartary was just a misinterpreted term for scattered nomadic tribes, why would anyone bother to erase it so completely? And more importantly, what happened to all those grand cities and territories that the map so clearly showed? The answer might be more shocking than you think. Almost simultaneously with Tartary vanishing from maps, something extraordinary began happening in America and Europe. Grand buildings suddenly started appearing everywhere. And we mean everywhere. Enormous structures with intricate stonework and architectural details that would challenge modern engineers. Government buildings, train stations, exhibition halls, even entire urban centers. What's more, they were supposedly constructed at breakneck speed between the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Consider the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. Records claim the city was rebuilt with breathtaking structures in just a few years. Given the devastation, recovery should have taken decades. Yet resources and skilled artisans were supposedly found to erect buildings that still amaze engineers today. How did they achieve such a feat? Could they have received external help from the Tartarians? If you're still skeptical, think about the 1893 Chicago World's Columbian Exposition. This white city, spanning over 600 acres with more than 200 elaborate buildings, was officially designed and built in a mere 2 years. 2 years. Can you believe it? These were structures of unique craftsmanship that would typically take expert artisans decades to complete. The official explanation? They were temporary structures made of plaster, cement, and fiber. But look at the photographs. Do these buildings look temporary to you? Absolutely not. They bear the mark of equipped engineers. But here's where it gets truly suspicious. Shortly after the exposition ended, these incredible buildings were demolished. Every single one of them. The government's reason? They were only meant to be temporary. But think about it. If you invested enormous sums of money into building something, would you immediately tear it down? It makes no sense. This seemingly irrational act sparked a profound question among Tartarian theorists. What if they were trying to eliminate the last evidence of the Tartarian Empire? Tartarian theorists propose that these buildings were not constructed for the expositions at all. No, they already existed. From the 16th to the 19th centuries, the Tartarians left their mark. As an advanced civilization, the buildings they erected showcased the same excellence. Governments never built temporary buildings for the fairs. Instead, they renovated already existing Tartarian structures and then destroyed them. Now, let's examine the architectural style itself. These buildings shared remarkably similar design elements, no matter where they were constructed. The same classical columns, the same ornate domes, the same precise masonry. Whether you are looking at a building in Chicago, San Francisco, or St. Petersburg, Russia, they all looked similar. How do you explain that level of consistency across different nations, different construction teams, and different periods? Unless they weren't built by different people at all. Even so, you won't believe the next card played by Tartarian theorists. They propose an astonishing idea, that the architectural evidence runs even deeper than the world's fairs. Perhaps the Tartarian Empire didn't just disappear. It was buried. Take a walk through any major city built before 1900, and you'll notice something strange. Buildings that seem to sink into the ground. Ground floors that have become basements. Windows that now sit at sidewalk level, staring at passers-by with eyes of buried giants. Tartarian theorists call this the evidence of the Great Mud Flood. What is the Great Mud Flood, you ask? They suggest that in the 19th century, a catastrophic event struck the earth, engulfing many cities, including hundreds of Tartarian ones, under layers of mud and debris. This massive geological disaster supposedly destroyed the advanced Tartarian civilization, leaving only the upper floors of their buildings visible. But where's the evidence of this tragedy? Their answer? The evidence is everywhere. In Seattle, entire blocks of buildings show their original ground floors buried beneath modern street level. The famous Seattle Underground isn't just a tourist attraction. It's proof that the city was once built on an entirely different level. And it's not just Seattle. New York City's subway system shows the same pattern. Construction workers occasionally discover precise masonry far below the modern city. Remember the San Francisco earthquake we discussed earlier? It's the second piece of evidence. During the rebuilding process, workers found something truly interesting. Instead of just rubble, they found intact design elements, elaborate facades that had been buried for decades. Since this coincides with the period when the Tartarian Empire disappeared, historians wonder, did these architectural pieces come from Great Tartary? Conventional historians offer a simpler explanation for the buried buildings: urban development. They argue that street levels naturally rise over time as new constructions are built over old foundations. Roads are paved and repaved, raising the ground level. Buildings are renovated, with new entrances built at the current street level. But is this really the case? Tartarian researchers argue that this explanation doesn't fully account for their observations, especially because we're not talking about a few inches, or even a few feet of gradual change. Entire floors appear to have been buried below modern ground level. What could have caused this, if not the Great Mud Flood? And let's not forget the suspicious timing. Why would this phenomenon appear so consistently worldwide during the exact same historical period that Tartary was disappearing from maps? Why would the buried architecture show such remarkable similarity in style and sophistication? The mud flood hypothesis suggests this wasn't gradual urban development at all. It was the burial of evidence. Evidence of a civilization someone desperately wanted hidden underground. The theory gets even bolder. It proposes that the world's fairs of the late 19th and early 20th centuries were not mere celebrations. According to Tartarian theorists, they were cover-ups. Think about it. How do you hide a lost civilization? How do you justify magnificent buildings that predate the official timeline? Simple. Claim you built them yourself. Show them to the world, and then destroy the evidence. A timeline alone is the biggest red flag. The 1893 Chicago World's Fair covered 600 acres with over 200 buildings. The Manufactures and Liberal Arts Building was the largest building in the world at the time. Official engineering records state this entire complex was designed and built in just 24 months. But even modern engineers find such a rapid timeline almost impossible. The Manufactures Building alone covered 44 acres under one roof. Its central hall could have fit the U.S. Capitol, the Great Pyramid of Giza, Winchester Cathedral, Madison Square Garden, and St. Paul's Cathedral, all at once with room to spare. Can you imagine that? The building featured intricate ironwork, complex glass exteriors, and structural details that would stun modern construction teams. And we're supposed to believe all of this was achieved in less than 2 years, using 1890s technology by workers who had never attempted anything remotely similar before. Doesn't that make you wonder too? The 1915 Panama Pacific International Exposition in San Francisco presents an even more impossible timeline. Just 9 years after the devastating 1906 earthquake reduced much of the city to rubble, San Francisco supposedly constructed an elaborate fairground. This fairground housed the magnificent Palace of Fine Arts and dozens of other engineering marvels. The official version tells us these structures were built specifically for the exposition using temporary materials. But examine the photographs carefully. Does that look like temporary architecture to you? No. But here's where they forgot to cover their tracks. Despite the scale and supposed temporary nature of these structures, there are very few detailed construction photographs. We have plenty of images of the finished buildings and their demolition, but surprisingly little documentation of the actual building process. Why? Unless there was no construction to document at all. If that made you pause, this next piece of Tartarian excellence will astonish you. Have you heard of star forts? These are unique geometric structures with precise angular shapes appearing in numerous locations worldwide. Europe, North America, Asia, and more. Tartarian researchers point to these mysterious star forts found across the globe, suggesting their origin is Great Tartary. While conventional historians classify them as military fortifications designed to withstand cannon fire, the other side says otherwise. Just by observing their geometric precision, you'll notice it doesn't quite fit the military explanation. Star forts follow mathematical principles that seem more suited for energy manipulation and defense. The angles, the proportions, the positioning. Everything about star forts suggests they were designed to channel and concentrate energy. They weren't built to keep armies out. They were built to manipulate power. To top it off, there's the acoustic evidence. Step into any grand cathedral or government building from this era, and you'll immediately notice the incredible acoustic properties. Your voice carries in ways that seem almost supernatural. Sounds resonate and amplify with astonishing precision. Tartarian theorists argue that these weren't designed for better religious sermons or political speeches. They were built as enormous resonance chambers, spaces designed to amplify sound frequencies for technological purposes. Here's where it all connects. Research shows that certain frequencies can influence matter at a molecular level. Sound waves can levitate objects, break down materials, and even alter the properties of water and other substances. What if the Tartarians had mastered this technology centuries before we even understood its principles? The implications are astounding. Imagine a civilization that could power entire cities without burning fossil fuels, move massive blocks of stone using sound frequencies, and transmit energy and information over vast distances without any physical infrastructure. This explains how Tartarians could build such enormous buildings with such speed and precision. It also explains the undeniable consistency of building styles across continents. And it could explain why this civilization had to be erased from history. Because if free energy technology existed, if it were truly possible to power the world without oil, coal, or nuclear fuel, that knowledge would threaten the very foundations of the modern economic system. And no government would have liked that idea. And if Tartarians possessed such advanced technology, what happened to it? And why don't we see any evidence of these energy systems at work today? The answer might be more disturbing than the theory itself. But before we delve into that, here's where the Tartarian mystery takes its most incredible turn. If this advanced civilization existed and built these enormous structures using free energy technology, there's one crucial question we must ask. What were the Tartarians themselves like? The answer is simple and shocking. They were giants. Walk through any grand building constructed during the Tartarian era, and you'll immediately notice something odd about its proportions. Doors 12, 15, even 20 feet tall. Staircases with steps so large that normal-sized people have to stretch to climb them. Ceilings 3 times taller than what we see today. Who would use such imposing designs if not giants? Conventional historians try to explain this as grandeur for grandeur's sake. The idea that architects simply wanted to create impressive spaces that would awe visitors. But Tartarian theorists propose a different explanation. These buildings weren't designed to impress normal-sized humans. They were designed for significantly taller inhabitants. Consider the furniture shown in late 19th century photographs. Chairs with seats set unusually high off the ground. Tables that seem colossal, even for the imposing surroundings. Beds that appear enormous, even by luxury standards. There's more evidence pointing to a gigantic race. Historical accounts speak for themselves. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, newspapers across the United States regularly reported the discovery of giant skeletons. Not just 1 or 2 incidents, but dozens of documented findings. Records from the Smithsonian mention numerous acquisitions of unusually large human remains. Skeletons ranging from 7, 8, and even 9 feet tall, with bone structures that suggested they belonged to a distinct human race. But here's where it gets suspicious. If you try to find any of these giant skeletons in current museum collections, you'll be wasting your time. They have all disappeared. According to Tartarian theorists, the Smithsonian and other institutions systematically removed these remains from public view, either destroying them or storing them in private collections. The big question is, why? The cover-up theory goes beyond just hiding bones. Some researchers claim that historical photographs from the late 19th century were deliberately edited to make people appear normal-sized, matching the buildings around them. It gets even more interesting. Cultural memory provides evidence. Almost every ancient civilization has legends of giants, beings larger and more powerful than common humans. Greek mythology speaks of titans. The Bible mentions the Nephilim. Norse legends describe enormous warriors. Native American tribes tell stories of giant races that once inhabited their lands. What if these weren't just myths and legends? What if they were cultural memories of actual encounters with a race of giant humans, the Tartarians themselves? This would explain the grand scale of Tartarian architecture. It would explain why these buildings seem designed for inhabitants much larger than us. And it would provide yet another reason why evidence of this civilization had to be systematically erased from history. Acknowledging the existence of a race of giants would fundamentally challenge our understanding of human evolution and development. It would raise uncomfortable questions about what happened to these beings and why modern humans inherited their world. Everything we know about how we came to be would suddenly seem false. But soon, another question surfaced. If the Tartarians were truly giants with advanced technology, how did they disappear so completely? And who had the power to erase all evidence of their existence from the historical record? The answer leads us to the darkest aspect of the Tartarian conspiracy. Their disappearance wasn't just the vanishing of a civilization. It was the most massive historical cover-up in human history, likely a deliberate and coordinated effort to rewrite our understanding of the past. They call it the Great Reset, not the recent economic theory, but a much older, more sinister process of erasing uncomfortable truths from the historical record. Consider the chronology of major catastrophes in the 19th and early 20th centuries. The Great Chicago Fire of 1871, the San Francisco earthquake of 1906, World War I, the Spanish flu pandemic, and World War II. Conventional historians see these as natural disasters, conflicts, and diseases that shape the modern world. But Tartarian theorists propose something far more unsettling. These weren't random events. They were coordinated attacks designed to destroy evidence of the Tartarian civilization. The Great Chicago Fire is particularly suspicious. Official records claim it started when Mrs. O'Leary's cow kicked over a lantern in her barn. But examine the pattern of destruction. The fire specifically targeted the city's most elaborate and architecturally significant buildings, while simpler structures were largely left intact. If this is true, then the cover-up might be more extensive than even Tartarian theorists believe. Tartary might not be the only advanced civilization erased from our history. However, the most compelling evidence comes from historical photography. Examine photographs of major cities taken in the late 19th century, and you'll notice something unsettling. The streets are empty. We're not talking about light foot traffic or quiet neighborhoods. Look at New York, London, Paris, Berlin, appearing practically abandoned. Wide boulevards stretch for blocks without a single person visible. Grand public squares remain completely vacant. Entire urban centers seem like elaborate movie sets awaiting the arrival of actors. The conventional explanation is photographic technology. Early cameras required long exposure times, and moving people wouldn't register in the final image. But this explanation crumbles when you consider the scale of what we're seeing. These aren't just less crowded streets. They are photographs of enormous cities that appear completely abandoned. Where are the carriages? Where are the vendors? Where are the basic signs of urban life you'd expect in any functioning city? While the empty streets in historical photographs could be explained by exposure times, and by the fact that 19th century cities were less crowded than today, recognizing these explanations doesn't mean we should dismiss all aspects of the Tartarian mystery. So again, we ask, what happened to Great Tartary? Tell us what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new videos. If this story intrigued you, wait until you hear about Mu, the mother civilization said to be even older than Tartary. Tap the video on screen and dive deeper. Keep an open mind. And until we meet again,